All right, we'll call this meeting to order of the Special Ed, Alternative Ed, and Early College Subcommittee. Can you please call the roll?
Mr. Agia?
Here.
Mr. Coogan?
Yep.
Mr. Costa?
Here. I'm just going to read this first before we do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. Will you please have a salute to the flag? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we are going to take the agenda out of order. So the first item on the agenda is the RPA progress update and the Evolve Pilot Pathway update. So I'll turn it over to the folks from RPA, and however you want to do it, fine with us.
Okay. So far, we've created another pathway for this year, and we're in the testing it out.
Do they have that?
Yes.
Yes.
Should.
Okay.
Oh, this little piece is no, but they have the school in Maine aspect that Rob is going to refer to.
Okay.
And so we partnered with School in Maine to make sure that we are servicing our students the way that they intended the program to run. And a lot of the projects that they do are signature-based projects or student-based projects, and they've been working closely with Jan on that. So to give you more information about School in Maine and what they've been working with, I'm going to turn this over to Jan so she can inform you as a step-by-step detailed event of what's going on.
So the first 2 months of school, we had our first signature experience we did with students, which was our mindful meal, where students were learning about being responsible food citizens. So we had a mindful meal expo. So thank you, Mr. Coogan and Mr. Costa, for going. It was really nice to see a lot of support there for our students. So we had that as our first project-based unit. Now we are starting our Get a Job unit. So we're 3 weeks into that unit. We have students actually tonight that are in Boston. Tomorrow they're presenting to 40 different teachers who are interested in getting into project-based learning to showcase some of their learning and for us to talk about our experiences with project-based learning, because this is new for us to implement project-based learning with students. So right now we're 3 weeks into the new unit. Students actually are going to Youth Connections tomorrow. We've partnered also with Youth Connections so they can learn about resume writing, writing cover letters, just getting experience interviewing. They have mock interviews set up already with several different local leaders in the community. That will be happening right before Christmas vacation, where we close out the end of the second unit. So that's kind of where we are curriculum-wise. We have currently 27 students enrolled in the pathway, and our average daily attendance rate is 85% so far for students. And when School in Maine did come to visit, the report is here. If you have any questions about some of the feedback they gave us, it was all very great feedback, and we've already implemented several of the pieces of feedback that they gave us. One of them that they'd like to see a weekly celebration of student success, which we started doing every Friday, so the students really responded well to that. Others are provide more intensive instructional support to kind of bridge the gap and make more coherence with our online learning platform, Edgenuity. So we're starting a new schedule, trimester 2, which is actually on Monday. So we'll be doing 1 hour intensive blocks for English, math, and science with students. And those are direct instruction units that we're teaching from Edgenuity for students to kind of help support with that.
Open it up to questions if you have any specific questions.
I got one.
Mr. Coogan.
Where did you get 300 students? I never saw your number that high. It's in the first line there, Jan.
No,
It's a combination of the whole.
I don't think it combined four
it should have
ways.
been, that should have been 237 students.
Okay. And the other, one other simple question, it's always come to my attention that you guys run the trimesters, but Durfee goes in the quarters.
Correct.
So how is that for transferring over for kids?
What we do is we make transfers in the middle of the trimester. We try to do that at the middle of the trimester, and we grade them out at that point. The reason why we went to trimesters, Mr. Coogan, is because of our internships. They're 12 weeks long, and it just fit better with our schedule of what we do. So we do make accommodations to make those changeovers for terms as well.
It just seems like I hear a lot about that, because sometimes it seems like kids get bogged down because you're in trimesters and they're in quarters.
Not usually. It's
Okay.
usually an easy transition.
Okay. That's all I got, Kevin.
Mr. Costa?
You have 27 students now.
Correct.
What's the end game in terms of enrollment?
Well, we were looking for 30 students to go in, and we had 30 students going into this second phase of it. However, some students decided that this was not what they wanted, so they opted back into the RPA. We will be looking actively to recruit more students as we go on.
What's the capacity?
30.
30.
Yes.
And the total cost, budget-wise?
It hasn't cost us anything.
Right.
It hasn't
Well, it's
cost
costing the
us.
Bar Foundation through their grant.
Oh,
So what's the budget
that's
look
just,
like?
that's pays for all the PD and something, it pays for a portion of Jan. So in terms of the overall cost, we've done is cost neutral in the whole RPA budget.
It was existing staff that
Yeah.
were just
So we didn't
moved
hire
over to
new
this
people.
program.
We just reallocated resources.
Right.
So they came out of the RPA budget?
Yeah.
All that,
Yes.
all those resources
It's
just
still
got deferred?
RPA,
We-
right.
We just shifted what they do and where they do it.
So your staff came with you, right? There's
Yes.
no new
Correct.
staff?
Yes.
No new
Correct.
staff. There are RPA teachers that, we have
Right.
3 other teachers and myself that are with the 27 students right now. And they were
Right.
all RPA students that we're just putting in a separate pathway.
And so certainly there were more than 27 students that were serviced by the staff last year when they were at RPA.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So that's what I'm saying. So now you've taken those resources from RPA and you've moved them to Evolve, and now you have 27 students being serviced by those same staff.
Correct.
Which is probably about the ratio we had last year.
What was your ratio last year?
Probably about the same, and daily attendance in that building is probably only 63%. If you take out the 85 at the RPA, at the Evolve. So in terms of daily capacity in classes, I don't see any difference, because remember, RPA has several pathways. Some are, and I'll let them explain it better than I can, but some are online, some are afternoon, some are flex time in the morning, so you don't actually have a body of students like Durfee High School has on campus at all times. So in terms of the staffing, student-teacher ratios, those things, I haven't seen any changes.
I think certainly when we discussed this over the summertime, you know, the big push was we'd be able to recruit from other schools. Still a little skeptical about that, considering that the 30 you had from RPA, which was your strongest pool, if you will, most interested, I guess, if you will. You know, some of them are already starting to say, this isn't really for me. So have they explained to you or shared with you why?
We had one student that opted out. So when we started, we had 21 students that we recruited from the existing RPA student body. Of those 21, one within the first 2 weeks said it was too challenging and she didn't like online learning. It wasn't for her. So
Fair enough.
she wasn't interested in it. She wanted face-to-face classes and went
Yeah.
back upstairs to the trimester-based program.
Okay.
And then we just onboarded 8 more students.
more.
So we went up to 20, or no, we onboarded 7 more students. We went up to 28 students, but one of the students had a separate IEP that we couldn't service.
When did that 7 get onboarded?
That was 3 weeks ago, at mid-trimester.
So originally it was 21,
Yes,
you were as high as 28, and now you're at 27.
yes. And we're gonna recruit more students after Christmas time, after we finish our second unit.
An additional 3,
Yes.
because you said 30 was your
Right.
was your
Yeah.
cap.
We always like to get at least little above that 3, because you always want one in reserve in case
Right.
someone does bow out.
I'll say this, that I was extremely impressed when I had a chance to meet some of the students. I thought that they put a lot of time and effort into the project. You know, they were definitely mindful. And even when I pushed them a little bit, they seemed to, you know, handle, I don't want to say the pressure, but when you're talking to an adult, you're not maybe accustomed to talking to adults, particularly strangers. That can be a little nerve-wracking, but you know, they stuck with what they knew, didn't try to embellish it. I was really impressed with that particular unit. And so, you know, one of the other things that struck me is that they felt as though that, I guess, lesson, if you will, or topic was one that really interested them. They felt like they were actually, you know, it was a different way of learning for them. And I asked them what the difference was between last year and this year, because I was looking for some tangible things. And you know, we're talking about the staff not being in a bigger group, not getting bogged down with the, you know, the traditional type learning. And this was more, it seemed like it was more interesting to them. So, you know, I wish you all the luck going forward with it. You know, I shared some of my concerns I had with the superintendent, because I think what we heard in the summertime with respect to what was going to transpire there in terms of it being a pathway sort of evolved into something bigger, I think, at least the way it was explained to me. People were talking about being interviewed for it and getting acceptance letters on letterhead with the new school program name on it, and then people were, you know, there was a whole nother area renovated for them, and just to get left that community at RPA feeling like this is a special group, and where does that leave us? And so it sounds like it's more of a pathway now than it did when I first heard about it. So if it works, that's great. But I've said it before and I'll say it again. If we're sort of chasing this because it's the Bar Foundation, and we're sort of chasing the grant money so that we can say that we have a program that's funded through the Bar, or that we partnered with the School of Maine, then, you know, I'd like to see us doing less of that if it's not getting the traction we want, and I'm sure you do as well. But I'm not going to know that until it gets signaled from you. So if it's working, great. It's another pathway, it's another opportunity for students. I think there should be multiple ones. I don't think it should be a one-size-fits-all for any student. But if we get to that point, if you can please signal, I don't want to be holding on to this before we decide to make changes just for the sake of the fact that we've invested a lot of time and effort into it, and the Bar Foundation has invested a lot of financial resources in it for us. So keep up the good work. If you have something, you know, in the future, by all means reach out. You know, always interested to come and see what's going on there. It's definitely helpful then, in most cases, than reading about your perspective of it, or the School of Maine's perspective of it, hearing them directly, the students directly, talk about why it's impactful to them and why they enjoy it, why it's different. For me, where I sit, that helps me make decisions far better than reading something that was sent over from, you know, the adults, if you will. So thank you. I yield, Mr. Chairman.
So I just had a couple of questions. Some things that came out, I would echo Mr. Costa's sentiment that what we were told in the prior alternative meeting, it wasn't here, but whenever it was in the spring, I wasn't anticipating this. I was intrigued by it. You know, I'm into alternative education, but my recollection of it was that we were going to try a few classes, was what we were told specifically, to see how it goes. And we weren't going to really see many different changes at RPA. Like if we went to there, what would we see? This is definitely something different than what we were told then. So I'm trying to come at it from a standpoint of, I want to support these things, but just I want people to be aware that this is not what we were told was going to happen. So I don't want it to come across like I'm being negative, but that's just the fact of the matter. When we talked about the budget, somebody mentioned that the Bar Foundation is not funding this, but it was all the regular money. But I recall getting something to say that the reason why we did this was the Bar. Right, so where is that
We have a
money going?
planning grant for a second year, so it's about $120,000. And it covers all the summer professional development, the travel, and it picks up a piece of Janet's salary.
But no, the
I
teachers,
haven't bought any positions with it. The implementation grant would come next, which is a larger grant. And we're in discussions with Bar now, and they're actually rethinking some of their standards because they've been so impressed with some of the work that they've seen here in Fall River, that some of their conditions that they were looking at the beginning, they may not be keeping in their decision to implement. So, for example, they were looking at separate codes. That was a hang-up, but I don't think that that's an issue anymore. So I think we can keep one code, which is RPA, the way we run it as a pathway.
so I mean, I think we should get some, this is probably a discussion for RPA in general, which I'm trying to get the Evolve piece out so you can take off, but as far as the budget goes, to just see what's in there, like teachers should be identified as Evolve teachers, not the regular school. I want to see what the impact of this is having on the regular. I know it's cost neutral, and thankfully we have a decent amount of money in the district now, but truth in advertising, I'd just like to see what it looks like when the dust settled here.
Like, you mean something similar to like the bridge program at the high school, the CBT, or the arts or something? Like, what do you?
But when you look at like the bridge, like when whoever was talking about it, 27 kids and 3 teachers, I kept that bridge, the conversation that we had about a lot of resources going into a certain number of students. That was an important piece. So maybe getting some more info on what that looks like, because if we can't duplicate that model for 300 kids for the amount of money, or it's going to cost us a lot more money.
Well, we also know these are the most expensive kids in the system.
Yep.
So the fact of the matter is, the facts are the facts. We can provide some data on total costs and those things. That's no problem. And what I'd also look forward at the next alternative ed meeting is I've tasked Ann with the partnership with School in Maine and their team. They're now drawing out what the clearinghouse is, RPA, what alternative ed means in Fall River, and how they then, we have different pathways. We talked about multiple options, so one size doesn't fit all. So that when you think of RPA as 7 through 12 or even 6 through 12 moving forward, we're going to be able to provide you and the public and everyone a graphic so folks really can understand how you come into RPA, you get assigned from Durfee, let's say, and then what happens? And what does that clearinghouse, the assessment, the analysis, and then the placement look like? So we haven't yet identified that. It's the next step in this work. And we can attach the overall budget so folks get a sense of what staffing looks like and all that to that when we come back to the next all-dead meeting.
Yeah, that sounds good. The kids that are were selected, how were they selected and what was the process? Were they like random draw? Was it?
It was any students in grades 10 and 11 who are off track, which is the students that we serve. Any student that just wanted to try a competency-based program.
Yep.
That was the criteria. There was no other criteria. And they had to complete an application and answer questions about how they learn best, what they're looking for in their education, what types of projects and interests they have, what their strengths are. And then they just had to interview and meet with myself and the 3 other teachers and just talk to us about why they wanted to learn in a different way.
Did anybody get not recommended?
No, we accepted every student that filled out an application and interviewed.
I mean, looking forward to trying to see if this is duplicated. Like, I think we need to look at all kids so that, I don't know what the history of these kids were. You probably have the information, we put in here about attendance of what they're at. I'd like to see out of the 30 kids, what were their attendance last year, the same, because I think it's telling.
I have a lot of that.
What I'm saying,
data
that type
for
of
each
data
kid.
makes
Very
it seem like,
telling.
okay, so last year, this was happening, and then this year, it's just better comparative data than just to say, sort of what it is. But ultimately, we want it so that more kids can get involved. I'm not, opposed to it in any way. I just think that we need to continue to get the information, ask the right questions, and then be on the same page. I like your idea of getting that piece going where everybody knows what's.
Hopefully we'll be back before Christmas if you schedule another meeting.
Yeah, whenever you tell me that we're ready for some of that, I think it will definitely be a good thing. But as far as Evolve, I don't have any other questions. If anybody else has any, I have a few for just Mr. Correa for the regular choice, but
Thank you.
May I just add one thing?
Sure.
Just, the reason why School in Maine, the partners with us on the grant, but it's also nice to have an outside eyes to help us assess. But we also have more. I also have former English department head Bill Malloy has been doing a lot of visits with us, and we had an amazing instructional walkthrough last week that was really good in the whole overall building. So there's a lot of progress being made overall in the building. We're up to 240 kids. I think we're doing great work. We got some great facility stuff on board that's happening next to help enable them to even do more stuff. So things are exciting, but I do want to just salute you guys for that the School in Maine recognizes that it's been off to a good start with the evolved pathway, but overall RPA has also had a great start in general. So thank you.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a safe trip.
I'm going to chaperone. Thank you.
Have fun.
Does anybody have any specific questions for Mr. Correa? Mr. Coogan? I put this on here just so that we have quarterly meetings, that we get a chance to talk to all the departments that are within this subcommittee, to give you a chance just to say a few words about the opening of school, how it went. Now we're the first trimester, staffing, budgeting. Are there any needs that you have, things that you want us to know? That's how I want to kind of open it up to.
I think we have a few things to celebrate, okay, that need us to get out. One thing, our attendance over the last 3 years. I did an analysis of September taking the same amount of days that we had. And if we take a look at 2017, 2018, we had 69% in September. And if we take a look at 2018, 2019, that went up to 74.4%. And right now, September 2019-20, we're looking at 76%. So we are trying to work on the attendance. So that has been going on. In October, again, 72% from 3 years ago, 70%, now we're at 73% in October. So we are seeing movement in an upward direction. It's difficult. It's difficult because our students have past history of not attending school, and we attack that every single day. We want to make sure that they know that the school is a safe place for them. We make sure they know it's a safe place. We make sure that we greet the students every day so that they're welcomed, and we see the results of that. One of the other things that we look at is that our SPED population right now, as it stands, is 32%. We have 32% SPED at RPA. That's 75 students out of the 234 students that we have to service, and that we have 2 SPED teachers in the middle school area. We have 2 SPED teachers in the high school area that service the students, and we just recently moved one of our math teachers who acquired his SPED certification. So now he's SPED certified in his math classes. So that gives us 5 working SPED staff to work with our students to make sure that we meet the recommendations that are needed on their IEPs. Another celebration is that one of the areas that we use for monitoring the progress is ANET. We just started that ANET monitoring process through ELA and math, and we just received our first report from that for ELA. Overall, in the middle school, we scored not fantastic, but better than anticipated. We're approximately 19% points overall away from the district where we need to be. So there's work that needs to be done there. However, if we take a look at the English 9, the English 1, we close that gap a little bit, and we're at, again, 11% away from the district. So we're closing the gap. On English 2 or English 10, there's the area that we have to spend some time on. We know that we need to work with the English 10 students. These are students that just entered RPA, okay? They haven't been with us throughout. So there are some gaps we have to work at. The students that have been with us through RPA for quite a while, English 3, they knocked it out of the park. We surpassed the district on English 3, and I'm quite proud of that. It's not a heck of a lot, it's by 1%, but that means a lot, especially in an alternative school. And the reading performance, again, we beat the district by 1% on each reading performance test that they did for English 11. I believe these students are showing what RPA has done for them. These students are actively learning. The data for the math was impressive. Algebra 1, overall performance for Algebra 1, we beat the district. We received 32% over 24% on that. Again, it shows that our teachers are working hard with the students. Our students are coming in, wanting to work. We're trying to get rid of the stigma that the students at RPA do not want to learn. They want to learn. We see it in the Evolve program. They get involved. And I don't mean to play on words, but we have students that want to have good academic experiences. And we have to change what we're doing. And I agree, we need more pathways. We have to develop more pathways. We should be a restaurant where we give the student a menu and they can choose the pathways they need to be successful. And if they're not successful with that pathway, we have to be open-minded enough to say, we'll create one for you.
We've got an open slate.
One of the things that I think, with the blessing of the superintendent, and I really appreciate this, is the flex scheduling that we give our high school students. By allowing them to have flex scheduling, they're allowed to go to jobs, they're allowed to do internships, they're allowed to do classes at their pace, and that's reduced the attendance problems dramatically. I did a report on conduct referrals. In 2017-2018, total conduct referrals was 797, with total suspensions of, excuse me while I look this up, I'm sorry, I should have put lines in, but I didn't do that. We're taking a look at somewhere in the vicinity of 87 suspensions that were 1 to 5 days. In 2018, we reduced the number of conducts from 797 to 695. And we reduced the suspension, well, the suspension rate 1 to 5 days was 134. It's not great. However, this year, we knocked it out of the park. We have 481 total conduct referrals with suspensions of 1 to 5 days. That's all. Rarely do we do 1 to 10 days unless there's a major catastrophe, a fight.
How many, Mr. Curry? I'm sorry.
For 1 to 5, 64.
This
For
year?
this year.
You mean last
These,
year?
You mean last
I
year?
don't mean in 2 months.
2019.
You mean from September to,
September.
Comparing the same time frame.
Same time
each
frame.
of the 3 years.
Same time frame from the beginning of school to now. Okay?
may I?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't mean to cut you off, just so I understand what I'm hearing. So in 17-18, from
27, 20.
September to today's date, November.
Right.
You had 797 conduct referrals in 2 months?
Yes. Yes. I ran this report. I did it from 9/5/2017 to 11/20/2017.
No, I'm not questioning that. It seems like almost 800 conduct referrals from September to November. So you're talking 10 weeks in school, 11 weeks in
50
school?
days, that's,
So that's 50 days, so that's,
When we
mean,
get
that's-
students in, again, when we get students in, we get their report, their conduct as well. I'll check this again. However,
so let me ask you this, what was, I thought you were talking about the whole year.
No.
I guess it begs the question now, so 17-18, you had 797 in 11 weeks, how many did you have for the whole year?
we had
Conduct referrals.
close to 2,000 that year. Again, that's not
Then might-
that's not
Yeah, it might be
suspendable
different
conduct.
things, but
No,
that does seem
right, no,
Yeah.
right. I mean, a conduct referral is a conduct referral. I mean, I know they come with different levels of concern, but in 87, how many suspensions did you have, 17, 18? You had 87?
For this time frame,
For the whole year?
I don't have the whole year, I'm sorry. I just have for
I can
this.
we can run all that data again when we come back at the next one.
Yeah, and I'm glad I asked, because I was missing it.
Okay,
thought
what
you
I
were
was
telling me
doing
you had
is-
797 for the whole year.
What I
and
was
that you
doing,
had
I was
87
doing a comparison
suspensions.
from the beginning of the school to this present time.
Can I see that thing, Rob, please?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think the point what I'm hearing you trying to make the point of is that it's getting better.
It's
What we're
moving.
just trying to get in, if we can get that for the next meeting, is what does that mean? You know, it's better, so it's moving in the right direction, but maybe there's, check the numbers to make sure that it's accurate, so we can at least see it. I like to get this info to see what it means. Does it mean a kid is, whatever, like late to class, is that one? Is it, you know, it depends on what you put in.
Exactly.
As well, but we don't know that, so when you do the report, if you can give us what
When
that is.
we did those conduct referrals, we at the alternative school, we record everything.
Yep.
So this way here, we give a good picture of what's happening to that student as they're in the school. So the numbers may seem high, I understand, but again, if there's any type of infraction, it was recorded.
Yeah,
Even if there
you
was
can
no-
put it in context for us, is basically what,
Yeah.
what I'm suggesting, so that we know what it looks like. My thing is just, before we close on the RPA, I do think there's a lot of positives going on. Are there things that, last time we were here was, I think we had positions that were vacant. We had the sub-separate classroom that was either not, we couldn't get a teacher, then it wasn't full, and then the kids were coming and going. Are any of those issues outstanding, or are we?
Right now,
full?
we're at capacity. We have a teacher. We just hired a math teacher 2 weeks ago for the opening that we had, and we had an open para position, and we filled that position as well. So we are at capacity right now.
And the sub-separates, the one that we had, those are full,
So
or those
the-
less than what we?
Right now, I have only one sub-separate in the middle school and one sub-separate in the high school running right now. We don't have the students to open up the second sub-separate room. But we do have the capacity if we need it.
Which is where we were last time, if I recall.
That's correct.
Couldn't find, like Durfee was having kids to, I think that was, if I'm not mistaken, that, so we were gonna add 2 high school ones, is that? Last year, we had Mr. Bouchard's room was full, and I think we created a new one in the budget, but we couldn't fill it.
Correct.
And then we had a debate here about where's the kids, and we didn't have the kids, so that position just went to, in this budget, a special ed teacher or whatever.
Correct. We have a special ed teacher now who is also, could go into a self-contained class if we need that to happen.
Doing inclusion supports right now.
Any other questions?
Just a last
Mr.
question, probably more sort of Dr. Doggett, but what's your role with RPA, and how have you been supporting them in that role?
So primarily, my role at this point in time was overseeing the social emotional learning piece. So I did a lot of work, in addition to Mr. Woodward, with guidance, the SACs, and the behavior therapists at the start of the year, which I can tell you just, you know, it's anecdotal, but walking into that building feels very, very different this year than it has in years past.
And how did that
Making
happen?
sure, I think a lot of
Was it through PD, or was it through?
changes in some of the structures where people will place security officers, some of it PD, customer service too as well, but also the role of 2 SACs were hired. We have 2 behavior therapists as well as guidance support, and we have a guidance intern. So I think the kids' day-to-day, almost immediate needs are being met instead of being reactionary, which I think in the past showed that there wasn't enough SEL support there for them.
We're being more proactive than reactive.
Catching the
What's going
problems
on.
before
That's
they
correct.
manifest into something
Correct,
bigger.
correct.
Ensuring that the students have the access to whatever supports they need, where before we were chasing.
And how many were
Supports.
increased? How many SACs and how many support staff?
I don't think we increased any, however, we filled them all, and we filled them all by competent, qualified people,
That's
highly
always been the
qualified
difference
people.
there. You've had the
Well, that's the
positions,
difference
we
in any
haven't been able to
position.
fill
Correct.
You can have a warm body in there.
So we have 2
It's not what
behavior
they're aware of.
therapists are very close to being certified as school adjustment counselors. So, you know,
We've
while
been
one
hiring
of
all
them,
dead people.
Yeah, one serves as a paraprofessional in the classroom. So she's there right away, immediately to nip problems in the bud. Yeah.
I mean, that's good. I mean, right? So we should be, you know, making sure we're meeting the needs of the students we serve, regardless of whatever the situation is, whatever their needs are. We should be making an effort to either create a pathway, or if they have, you know, needs that need to be met, educational or social emotional, then we should be making an effort to meet those. So, you know, just trying to find what your tie-in was to RPA. And so, is that something that is going to be ongoing?
Correct.
Or, okay.
Correct.
All right.
Yes.
Well, that's good, because I think that's needed. I don't want RPA and those students ever feel like they're out there on an island.
We're
That
there
they're a
at
part of
least
our school
weekly.
system, they're our students, and regardless of their learning styles, or we should be making sure that we're meeting their needs. And if it's not working, we need to be putting our heads together and figure out what it is that we need to do to make that happen. But thank you. I yield, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Coogan, anything?
No, I'm all set.
My last question, is the school maxed out? So as
No.
far as, so you
No.
still have some room
We have
for
room.
students to transfer in?
Yes.
And I said that was my last question, but I'm not accurate.
Don't lie to
Just
us.
one, I know in the past we've had meetings where Dr. Doggin was the decision maker, like between the high school or the middle schools and RPA to when it would come, so student wants to go, you would, I think, in the past, be the decision maker, and not just,
And that primarily has stayed that way. Julia Carlson gets involved if it's more on the academic side of it. But I work closely with Drew, I work closely with Dave Dussault, and whatever principal is making the referral, whether it's a middle school principal or whether, you know, as I said, it's coming from the high school through Drew. Sometimes we have to sit down and we have to discuss what's in the best interest, but still there's a process, there's an intake process, there's a meeting with the parent that's held to as well before those
Yep.
decisions are made. So yes, I'm still involved in that.
superintendent.
If you could think about the org chart, all alternative ed options are under Ann's umbrella. So she's coordinating this concept of the spoken wheel, is that the right word? The wheel and spoke, the hub, with RPA and alternative ed being the hub, and then how do we service kids? Coordinating that, making sure that we have very clear protocol is hopefully what we'll bring to you in the next month. And we're excited about this. It's just another step in the overall phase of what alternative education looks like in Fall River. And we're going to continue to grow and expand. And you know, some of the stuff that's happening at Durfee as well is considered alternative ed. What we're doing with the pathways with BCC and a couple other things that we're working on. So it's an exciting time. But it's definitely, these guys, they got a challenging job. That's the bottom line, it's hard work. And, you know, we don't see the successes every day, but it's when you see them, it makes you feel good.
Can I just ask one more question?
Yeah, Mr. Costa.
Thank you. The data that you were reviewing with the progress that's been made, is that the same cohort of students?
No.
So it's not apples to apples?
No. No, it's not. That's the.
As you were saying that, I was wondering to myself, is it that we're getting traction? Because you, and rightfully so, celebrating year 3, that you know, they were doing better than the district by, even if it was 1%, they're still doing better. Was wondering if that was, if we're getting traction, in other words, year 1 and 2, and then now 3, they're making that progression, but we don't know, well, I shouldn't say we don't know, we do know it's not the same cohort. So
We do know that the culture, I'm sorry.
yeah, that's okay.
Mr. Costa, we do know the culture has changed a great deal, and that the students that have been there for a while actually make sure the new students entering understand what's going on as well. I'll give you a quick little story about how they do that. We collect phones, as you know. We're the only school that collects phones. Our students are not allowed to have phones. So I was shorthanded, so I went down to the area to collect the phones. I got called away to speak to another person down the stairs. As I'm speaking to the person on the stairs, about 6 to 8 students came in. One student saw that there was no one there, and she decided to collect the phones off the other students and put them away. no word of a lie. That happened, it's on video, we changed the culture. So what happens is when new students come in, the students are so proud of what they're doing, it becomes contagious. So yes, it does affect the behavior.
And when you, if you're able to, when you compile that information regarding the conduct, can you also give a breakdown of how many students took those tests each of those years?
Okay.
So we know
We just
that
started taking that
this year.
test, and that was 50 students that took those tests.
this year
This year.
was the first year.
First year.
So how were you measuring it over years past?
Comparing it to the district.
Oh,
Relating to the district.
oh, so you were just simply taking those 50 off of what was going on in each of the years district-wide,
Just,
not necessarily balancing
their
it all.
peers. Their peers
Okay.
taking the test.
All right.
So if we had 34, the district had 33, we
Right.
beat the district by 1%.
I got you.
It was comparing
I thought you-
apples to apples on that
In
one.
that regard, okay. Okay.
Yes.
All right, I got it.
Sorry for the confusion.
No,
on
no,
that.
that's fine. That's why I asked the questions, and I
No problem.
apologize, but it helps me understand it a little better if I,
Thank you very much. Keep up the good work. Thank you all for your support. And we're going to move on to the next item.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome to stay if you want to watch the presentation. It's up to you. Is everybody back to have an agenda? Do you have an agenda?
I meant a copy of the agenda.
Mr. Loche, do you have any of these extras that some of them could see?
Person left.
Is this what we had?
This
in
is
here?
what you have, and I don't, Deb, did you get a copy of the presentation beforehand?
Yes, he's got it.
Yeah, like the,
But this also has a few extra documents, a copy of the report, everything.
okay.
I got one, Kevin. Yeah, right here.
You can share? Okay.
Can't stop moving.
This is what we have in here.
This is the,
One after the other. It's crazy.
Right? I know you needed something. All right. Yeah, that's just the additional stuff. It's just the copies of the report. They already received the report.
sounds good.
And stuff, other stuff.
Rock and roll.
is in bed. All right, good evening, everyone. So I normally would have loved to have read the 96 pages between the Walker report and the strategic plan, but I wanted to get us out of here in a reasonable amount of time. So this is our presentation regarding the 3-year strategic plan for the Office of Special Education for Fall River Public Schools. The Walker report. For a quick summary, this was over a 6-month process in which the Walker staff, which conducted interviews of over 40 district stakeholders, including our CPAC members sitting in the back over there. They conducted walkthroughs and class observations at all schools in a variety of settings of inclusion in sub-separate and self-contained classrooms. We also sent out surveys to all teachers to get their feedback on the current status of services and support for them within the schools. They also conducted a district document review in which, between our talks with Walker, they requested several documents, and we also added some for their reviewing as well. The final product was a 72-page report, which included strengths within the district, areas of growth, recommendations, and also a social-emotional learning addendum. We included this as an addendum because the Walker folks felt strongly about including it. They did a lot of observations in our classroom and thought this was relevant to the work they were doing and wanted to be this part of it. We made it an addendum because it wasn't necessarily focused on special education. Strengths. Best practices were noted in a lot of different places throughout the district. They really saw some great instruction. They saw some high levels of support at different schools and at different grade levels. They did notice there were high levels of planning and curriculum and instruction were noticed in various schools. They also noted that strong administrative presence for support programs at most schools. Areas for growth. One of the major things throughout the report was noted that there was a lack of consistency throughout the district, really in all areas, for instruction, curriculum resources, behavior management, staffing. It really was across the board. In addition, professional development. I think this is one area that definitely came back through the surveys and interviews, that we have not provided a sufficient amount of professional development for our teachers to support our students with such complex needs in the city. Current level, I'm sorry folks. Also, current level of support staffing, they noted that one, it varied from program to program and school to school, and they also questioned whether or not it was actually sufficient per certain disability areas and within the schools, and also looking at potentially an administrative level of support for very large programs. They noted also the structure of special education central office, that there were some very questionable things that had been set up in that structure that needed to be looked at and have also been incorporated into the plan. Review and oversight processes for all related department activities. So talking about curriculum, collaboration, staffing for all of our programs and student to staff ratios, to really create a review process so that we're keeping track of these things and having processes in order to do so. Really bringing more structures to the department so that we're providing a high level of oversight throughout the district. Structure of substantially separate programs throughout the city. They did question kind of our organization of programs and how many we had them and the way they were spread out throughout the city, and the lack of some of them actually being programs for students. The portions of having standalone classrooms for particular disabilities, they did not think was an effective measure to really support students in their needs. They said it was great that it provided different options, but that standalone classrooms typically do not support students or teachers' growth. And another piece also for growth was collaboration. As they noted, we had great work going into classrooms throughout the city, but that nobody was aware of what was going on at other schools and the best practices that were really happening, and that we really should look into creating structures in order to better facilitate these across the district. So the 3-year strategic plan is really compiled from recommendations that we got throughout the Walker report. At the end of each section contained recommendations for our next steps for short-term and long-term. And then also, I think pages 50 or 51 through the end of it is all the compiled recommendations and then the addendum. Also, some of this has come from my observations through entering the district and based on what I've seen as best practice in past and some of the things we need to look and implement. The plan spans through this fall of 19 through spring of 2023. The sections that I have really compiled the recommendations down into are curriculum, instruction, assessment, and outcomes, inclusion, substantially separate classrooms and supports, department structure, support, and policy. And then each section is really broken down by tasks, rationale, and where it can also be noted within the Walker report or an additional addendum document. You will see at the end of your report there is a Dear Colleague letter regarding dyslexia, because there are several tasks that I've added into this report because dyslexia is becoming a very prominent issue throughout the Commonwealth itself, and we're expecting some guidance from DESE to come down very soon on what we need to be doing as a district in order to support learners with dyslexia. So the key points of for each section is the next couple slides. In looking at the curriculum, instruction, assessment, and outcomes section, we need to increase school level oversight of instruction and curriculum. And when I say this, I talk about the department ourselves. That we need to do a better job in providing guidance on curriculum and instruction for our teachers throughout the district. When we have a student population with special needs of over 2,400 students, it's a quarter of the district. We can't be sitting back and not providing guidance on instruction. Increase professional development for all staff. what it's looked like in past, from what I've conducted through my own personal interviews with folks throughout the district, what is noted in the Walker Report is that we have not provided our staff the tools necessary to provide an effective education for our students. And we need to look to diversify really kind of our topics in professional development as well as our providers for our students. Also really to look to have a focus on supporting inclusion. It's one of the other main themes as well. Curriculum review at the district level. Currently there really is no curriculum review process, in particular for our department. In looking at what have we purchased for our classrooms and for our teachers to implement, and are they finding it to be effective? Is it meeting students' needs? Is it meeting teachers' needs? Is this something that we should continue? We need to really keep this review process in place to make sure everybody's needs are met and moving forward. Reviewing assessment data and outcomes for special education students. This was a piece that they noted that we weren't really looking at assessment data as a district to see where students needed support, where they might be falling short, and where we need to provide intervention. We need to do a better job of monitoring this for both inclusion and separate students. Reading instruction, curriculum intervention, and dyslexia. As a whole, and I will say this in particular, for our substantially separate classrooms, we don't have consistent reading intervention. This is an area we need to really highlight and make sure that we're providing our teachers with professional development and support in rules-based reading intervention, especially with the mandates that are going to come down with dyslexia. In order for us to provide proper instruction for students to really make gains in reading. One of the things I noted in the report is that one of the things we see consistent among special education referrals is students are reading below grade level. And we see that it becomes a cyclical trend that when students aren't learning how to read, right, and they get to that point where they're reading to learn, if they're not doing that, we're seeing an automatic uptick in special education referrals, and we're also seeing an uptick in behavior. So I think one of the root causes of looking at this and why reading has to be such a priority moving forward is because we have not been consistent with it throughout the district. Piece of collaboration for PLCs for instruction and behavior. We need to get our people together more. We need to get them meeting and collaborating and talking about what they are doing for best practices for instructing students and bringing schools together in order to support everyone. Assessment, evaluation, and outcomes. Just kind of reiterating this piece that we need to do a more consistent job of evaluating our students and especially putting measures in place that we're evaluating programs to make sure students are moving forward. If not, then we're reassessing programs and looking at how we can better support students. A perfect example of that is how we've restructured the Bridge program at Durfee. Students were not making gains, they were not moving forward, and then doing that assessment piece, also looking at attendance and their outcomes, and looking how we can evaluate and restructure to produce outcomes that are actually going to be beneficial for students. And overall, one of the major pieces is monitoring by our department, and then also creating district collaboration through central office departments, so this occurs on a regular basis. Specialized program, inclusion and supports. Once again, professional development. And then assessing, developing, and reviewing. We don't have a current process to kind of preview professional development. We need to put something in place to make sure we're bringing forth quality PD in front of our teachers and providers. We also need to really, just like we said, make sure we're bringing forth diversified providers to provide good instruction. One of the other pieces that noted that we have very large, substantially separate programs at our schools, and we don't provide any direct administrative support to those programs. One of the things that I'm proposing in this plan for spring of 2020 is to be looking at, and really we're in the process of it now, because you can see in one of your handouts is a job description for these positions. It's for administrative positions that are a BCBA and a cluster coordinator. And these would be for the purpose to support our substantially separate programs that house anywhere from about 36 to 50 students or more, in order to make sure we're providing administrative support and oversight and evaluation to these programs. Partnerships. We're still pursuing our partnership with South Coast Educational Collaborative. That is moving forward, and it's actually moving forward very quickly. I think their next meeting is where they're going to take a vote on our application to have us enter. It did take a little bit of push on our end to get them moving, but it's headed in the right direction. In addition, we're looking to join up with SMEC, which is Southern Massachusetts Educational Collaborative. One of the major things about joining both collaboratives is honestly there's no drawback to it. We have students at both locations, so one, it brings us decreased tuition. Both of these collaboratives also provide staffing and specialized areas that the district has historically struggled to find on our own. As well, they also provide consultation. And when you're as a member, this all comes at a discounted rate, and there's no reason we shouldn't be taking advantage of it. Many districts throughout the Commonwealth are also members of dual collaboratives, only because of the increased benefits. And I can say from South Coast and from SMEC, at their recent presentations from the November 5th PD, really brought forth some high quality professional development, both for teachers and paraprofessionals, that we got some extremely high feedback on and engagement, and we've already had some folks come back to us and saying, I'm trying this in classrooms and it's working, which is great to hear. We'll also have a meeting set up to meet with our group from Best Buddies to really help grow inclusive opportunities for our students, to get them matched up with their typical peers, both in school and out in the community. Really growing those inclusive opportunities for our students in a structured environment with oversight as well as parent involvement. We're going to also take a look into class size ratios, staffing, and supports. Right now in the district, we have almost have a one-size-fits-all model. It's either 12 students to one teacher to one para, or maybe two paras, depending on the disability. And really, districts throughout the Commonwealth are really looking at different potential staffing ratios for students that are really providing better outcomes, helping kids stay in district by changing the ratio. One of the things they've looked at is that, when we're going above 8 at points, sometimes the classroom and the dynamics become too chaotic that it doesn't matter how many paraprofessionals you add. It's just it becomes detrimental to the classroom and the disability of the instruction. Reorganization of substantially separate programs in the district, especially looking at our middle school models. Right now at the middle schools, we almost, especially for our language-based, our social emotional programs, we have one to two standalone classrooms at each of them, which doesn't really provide any consistency in support and instruction for those teachers. And one of the things we look at when we look at teacher retention is that when you don't have a community of fellow teachers to rely on to exchange best practices and work with, teacher satisfaction goes down. They tend to leave the profession or move on to other districts and other positions. That's why I think one of the things we need to look at when we're reorganizing is building significant programs where we have pathways and can create structure and consistency for students. Right now, one of the other things we see too throughout the middle school programs is a lot of movement from school to school due to one-off issues that really should be solved within the school, but instead they're looking at a different environment. Utilizing projections for program classroom allocation. One of the major things I have noticed, and well, I think the Walker report noted within it, since we've come in the district, we are consistently over-enrolled in substantially separate classrooms. We've had rooms with numbers as high as 18 students in it, which absolutely defeats the purpose of having a substantially separate classroom.
Right.
Which means we need to look at our numbers and anticipate for mobility and growth and project the proper amount of classrooms needed for our students to get the education they deserve. One of the other things the Walker report noted was bringing expert level consultancy. We can't necessarily always expect programs to grow on their own. Sometimes we do need to bring in that outside lens or that area of expertise in order to help a program grow its capacity and really build the measures and structure to put in place to keep our more challenging students within the district. We want to educate our students in-house and as many as possible as well. Stone School capacity and supports. They did note that this was an area for growth. They also thought the overall capacity of Stone should be looked at to be increased, and in addition, possibly looking at 2 different sites. Right now, Stone is a K through 12, which when you have a K through 12 of students with emotional impairments and a severity of secondary disabilities, it creates a very challenging environment, and it was a major concern noted in the report of having that wide of age range in a single building. I will say the Stone staff does an amazing job managing these students on a day-to-day and have created structures to work with this. However, in the report, it was definitely noted it would be something to look into, and that the fact it would also increase our capacity. Really overall looking at creating a greater continuum of services. Right now, we very much go back and forth between either inclusion or in a separate classroom. We need to really create that partial inclusion support so that we're not having to move students directly from one environment to the other. That we have that middle ground. That we look to be able to support a student and keep them either at partial inclusion measures so that hopefully we're able to support them, rebuild their skills, and move them on to full inclusion. Paraprofessional positions and evaluations. The report noted that we should look into really diversifying our paraprofessionals and their skill sets and creating more specific positions per disability areas. For example, one specific area was for our students with autism and having registered behavior therapists, RBTs, which is different than our district behavior therapists, bringing in this extra level of expertise so that we increase the capacity of our people working with our students with disabilities so they're able to manage more students and really do an overall more comprehensive job. One of the other pieces that I did skip over before, and I apologize, one of the other pieces that we are going to look with either Southeast or SMEC, and really it would be partnering with the best of either, is creating in-district public day classrooms so that we're able to pull back students that we have sent to them out of district and educate them in-house and really cut tuition costs as well as transportation. Right now, our transportation budget is a significant amount that goes towards out of district, as well as for every classroom we would house in the district, we would get a significant discount off of their tuition, besides the fact also if we were a member of the collaborative. So it would be dual savings and also bringing students in district. And one of the other pieces, it would create us greater flexibility to be able to transition students back in the district. Keeping them in their home area and also being able to develop their skills in their home area is tremendous. We do students a disservice when we have to send them out because they're building their transitional skills in somewhere other than their hometown, which they're going to have to come back to and try and apply those skills, and sometimes that can be a very significant challenge. Last portion, department structure, support, and policy. When I came in, I can say I was a little shocked. When I inquired with my special education supervisor, I said, where is our vision and mission? Where is this for the department? And their answer was, we haven't had one. This is an area which we need to dedicate significant time to really guide the work of the department. You know, it's like trying to sail a ship without the sail. We don't have any direction. There's no guiding light for all of our team members to follow. And this is what we need to put in place so that they have this in the back of their mind anytime they're making decisions in terms of instruction, in terms of placement, in terms of any decision that impacts a student moving forward. Department organization. One thing that the report noted that they thought was interesting is that we don't have the files at the school, and I can agree with this. I think this was done previously as a measure to create, I guess, greater oversight of the files and make sure people weren't losing them. But in my personal opinion, there's structures, there's monitoring mechanisms we can put in place to bring these back to schools. Having the files at central office does absolutely no support to our teachers. Our teachers need to have the files on hand so they can look at actual assessments and reports and past IEPs and evaluations for students so they can help guide their education. When I was in the classroom, one of the things I always went back to look to was a student's psychological report, because that told me how a student processed information and how I was going to best reach them and what was going to be the best measure. We don't have that support on site at schools now. In addition, all of our clerks are also located at Durfee, which then they're not a support to the schools, which I think we could also leverage them to better support our schools and help our school office teams and whatnot, and also create closer communication between them and their team chairs. Team chairs, clerks, supervisors, roles of caseloads and contracts, etc. Basically in the report noted that we don't have enough of any of these positions. I think we need to do a little bit more deeper dive into caseloads and how many kids are actually on a clerk's caseload. How many kids are actually on a team chairs, to get a better sense of what this would look like if we did make a transition and if we do need more people in this area. And that is one of the priorities and tasks within the plan. but to see what this would actually look like. The other piece that they noted of concern was that teachers are holding annual review meetings, which they noted that right now, providing that level of PD, one, would be a significant challenge to all teachers, and two, there's lack of consistency in the process. They also noted in reviewing the IEPs and looking at historically for some students that the annual reviews, we were not seeing much changes, which is what the purpose of the annual review is, to update the IEP and make sure students are moving forward and achieving goals. Community facilitators, this is an area, position we have in 2 different capacities in the district, and I think we need to look at really kind of joining these folks and making them more school-based in order to better serve schools. We have 2 directly in our office, and I think if we uniform the position, we could actually leverage them to be better supports to the schools. De-escalation and restraint techniques. Basically, the report noted that they firmly believe that CPI is outdated and is no longer serving schools in a positive manner. That the physical portion is hard to manage and implement on a regular basis and puts students and teachers at risk. A handbook review. The handbook last that was written for the special ed department was in 2015 and has not been reviewed since. We need to really look at this, make sure we're updating state and federal law and policy, as well aligned with district protocol and procedure. Then looking at, as we noted earlier, for the internal leadership piece, looking at our department and making sure that our roles in terms of supervisors are appropriate, that they're allotted the right amount of schools, and also potentially looking at a focus on instruction. We have so many coaches, deans, department heads throughout the district. We don't have a single position that necessarily focuses solely directly on special education instruction. And it's 2,400 students throughout the district. So I think it's one area that definitely needs to be looked at. Meetings for district collaboration and task force. There were several issues throughout the Walker report noted that we need to really have a higher level of focus on in creating these structures in order to do so. One thing that I thought was a very effective process that I've seen happens to different folks at different times as schools allocating for positions. I think we'd be better off creating a class size review process where districts are stating, schools are stating needs, providing us data, and it goes through a team review process in order to determine what is the appropriate support to put in place. And then lastly, looking at transition services and extended school year, which are 2 things that, in my opinion, very much go hand in hand. One thing right now I know at Durfee, we're definitely looking to grow the pre-vocational options for our community-based and autism students to make sure they're having more opportunities throughout the school. In addition to develop these skill sets and their adaptive life skills, and then our extended school year program right now, which is a K through 12 model, I think really needs to probably be broken down into 2 sections, looking at a K to 8 and a 9 through 12, and the 9 through 12 having a greater focus on transition, which would be actually a very simple fix for the district and wouldn't cost us any additional money. Consistent themes for the plan is really looking at building district and program capacity. We have to build our folks' skill sets in order to support our complex students and to make sure that we're appropriately having the support there for them. Curriculum review and oversight to make sure that that our curriculums are consistently meeting our students' needs, that our teachers have the skills in order to implement. Improving instruction and teacher support through professional development, communication and collaboration, program administrative support, department organization and staffing, and then creation of policy and procedure. That would be it.
Yeah,
Not much there, thank God.
the other pieces are all just for information, right? It's not.
No.
Yeah. Open it up to any questions from the members? Mr. Costa?
Boy. Well, first of all, thank you, Mr. Loesch, but, I know coming in, trying to get acclimated to the district and figure this department out, but a lot of the same themes that I see in this report from Walker, we contracted with Walker several years back, a lot of the same themes exist.
Yep.
I think, one of the things I think is important is certainly the consistency piece. But there needs to be a level of oversight when you say a 3-year strategic plan, what I just heard you present seems to me like it's gonna take a whole lot longer than 3 years to roll out, and time is of the essence. I mean, I don't have to preach this to you or others, parents. You know, students are going through our classrooms at a huge disadvantage if they have a special education plan, because we don't have these things in place now. And it's frustrating because, you know, I've had these conversations with prior SPED directors, with prior superintendents about these very things, and, you know, some levels feel, you know, may have been hoodwinked into thinking that they were existing or that they were in process, but the reality is that all you have to do is talk to some of the families whose students are in these classes, and you clearly know that they're not taking place. And so it's frustrating. You know, there's a lot of things in this report that, you know, are not surprising. The question, I guess, that I have for you is, how do you implement it? And where do you start? Because it seems like, you know, just about every piece of this is important. And I obviously, you have to take one. Is it professional development that's driving it? Do you need the administrative support network in place to do it? You know, there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle that are going to need really intense, detailed coordination. We have the people in place in some levels, but the coordination of that level of service or the instruction that's going on, you know, needs to be monitored, and it needs to be discussed, and everybody needs to know what the other, you talk about collaboration. I'm sure we got great things going on in the district, but if we don't talk about it, we don't share it, then what good is it? It's good for a few and not for all. And so, you know, I give you a lot of credit because you're gonna need a lot of support in order to get this to take place. And at the end of the day, you know, I need to know how that's going to impact students in the classroom. I heard a lot about the structure, a lot about adults, a lot about systems, all of that stuff. What I didn't see a whole lot of is how is that going to make what goes on in the classroom a better environment for the students that we serve. And I'm sure that it'll happen. You're going to put systems in place, but I missed a lot of that.
So through the chair, if I may, one of the things last year as we were undergoing this report, we spent a lot of time talking with the consultants as well as with staff. And we learned, for instance, the language-based program, there was no entrance and exit criteria. It became almost a catch-all. Now, the Landmark School provides an awful lot of professional development as well as a lot of coaching. Mr. Loesch has already, and school committee, approved a contract, so professional development has already started and the coaching model has already been implemented. So that program in and of itself is already getting the support. So we didn't just wait until now to say, let's start some of this too as well. But that's been a wonderful addition.
I think this is a good start.
Yep.
I mean, have a Walker come in or another agency and evaluate top to bottom the entire department. Some of this stuff, you just being in a district a short period of time, should have been able to say, I see that as an issue, or I see that as an issue. The other stuff, you know, is more granular, so it took, obviously, them digging a little deeper into, you know, our systems or our programs. But I just see a lot of information out there that I think is almost unattainable simply by you being in that role. And maybe that's been the issue for other, you know, directors in the past, that the needs were greater, or maybe they weren't as good of an advocate for the department or for the students that they service. I'm not really sure. I just know each time we checked in on special ed or asked questions about special ed, we were, you know, we got a handle on that, we're doing this, we're trying that. The reality is that we could do far better. And so, you know, whether it's budgetary or not, I'm not sure, but
Yep. So, in looking at the plan already, what I look at it, consider it as, is like a trickle-down effect, right? We have not done a good job historically in supporting our teachers. to really meet students' needs. And that's what it comes down to, is meeting students' needs. We haven't put the structures in place, we haven't put the administrative support. There's many missing holes and pieces throughout our system, without a doubt. Yep, the Walker report was great. I think it did provide me some information, but I'll be totally transparent with you. There wasn't much in there I didn't find out in my first 4 months that I couldn't have found out on my own. What I look at is, if you look at fall of 2019, most of that has already been executed. I'm not one to wait. We need to move, and we need to move quickly in order to make sure students are getting the right level of
I haven't
support.
seen this. I need to tell them when you get the strategic plan.
This is.
Yeah, no, they have it.
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah,
Oh, they
they
do?
have
We got it,
Yeah, and
yeah.
I think it was in your pile, too. I'm
Yeah,
pretty
it
sure.
wasn't in the packet.
He's got it all under
I
control.
got it.
It's just that.
No, I gave you the,
He's on his game.
Hey,
No, I see
I
it.
give him
I-
credit where it's
yeah.
due. He's on his game so far.
I hope I stay on it.
So do we.
We'll see.
There you go. One of the major other pieces too that I noticed when I came into the district is our department wasn't collaborating with anyone. They weren't utilizing any of the expertise throughout central office and leveraging supports in order to make things happen.
So let me ask you this pointed question. How are we going to make that happen? Are you going to now require that teachers who are in special ed classrooms are doing professional development together amongst themselves as a department? How are you going to make that happen?
Well, that's a piece that we need to look through contract negotiations, which thankfully they're coming up. The other piece is too, is that we need to actually provide PD that they want to attend and they feel meets their needs.
And I
So
think we've
that's the
done a
assessment
great
piece.
job with that recently. I think we're more inclusive now. I think we draw from the needs of the schools. And I mean, we could do better.
Yeah.
But before, we would say, here's the PD slate. We want you to come and attend. And quite frankly, if you ask many teachers, they probably didn't have much interest in what was being told. This is your PD. We've gotten away from that, I think. I think now it's a better process that we have. I hear a lot of these system things. I just need to know how are we going to do it. First question I asked right off the bat, we heard, well, it's contractual. We're going to see about that. So that tells me that may be a process, maybe a long process. It could be a short process, but it's certainly going to be a process.
Yep.
But that's key, giving teachers an opportunity to collaborate amongst themselves with teachers who are in the same content area or teaching the same expertise
Yep.
is essential. And so that was just my first question.
So in a part of that too, right, is changing the perception of the people in my department, as well as that good special education services come from a good model of customer service, right? And a piece of that is that I don't think we provided very good customer service in the past. Our people, as I have told our supervisors currently, as well as our team chairs, we need to be out in schools, we need to be out in classrooms, we need to be present, we need to be offering and going to the teachers in order to meet their needs. We
Right.
can't expect them to come to us, right? These people have too much going on in their daily responsibilities to then ask them, oh, can you come over to central office to come do this PD and, you know, be a part of this? Is providing the structures, making them accessible, and having them engage in it because they want to and they're going to build their skill sets.
So those people in those positions, how are you going to put a system in place to ensure they're no longer sitting in their offices doing their work on a daily basis and they're more in the schools? How is that going to look for me?
Well, very fortuitous. At the same time he's doing this, we're going to be vacating Durfee High School. So we're in this year where we're talking about setting the district up in quadrants and putting people's offices into the district to get them out.
So that's a physical way of doing it. We're just going to relocate them. You're no longer going to be in this building, you're going to be in this building.
It's
How
also-
do we get them out of that building and that office
It's their
into the
week-
classrooms? Who's
Yep.
going to monitor that?
So
How are we
it's-
going to know that's happening?
It's their weekly expectation that, one, they're meeting with principals, they're meeting with team chairs and assessing issues, and we're doing a lot of problem solving on the floor. They've also now have to participate in the Office of Instruction, school walkthroughs and observations.
So they'll be part of that team.
Exactly.
So if they're not
Which we
doing
haven't
the
done in
work
past.
of meeting with principals, being in the classrooms, someone's going to know that fast.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Because when you go through that walkthrough, someone's going to say, who's this?
Where's
Nice to meet you.
so-and-so?
We haven't seen you in 3 months.
Yep, and I mean, one of the
Good.
really disturbing things that I got the information from for principals was, some of them, when I went out and met them in the spring and went into schools and did observations, they go, you're the first person who's ever come to my school, I've been here.
Right. That doesn't-
Which you know, personally, I don't want to comment on other people's practice, and we need to move forward, but I find it appalling.
Yeah,
You know.
we could set up a whole nother meeting for that conversation, but we're moving forward.
Yep.
You're in place now. You know, I think we've identified the areas that need to be, you know, addressed. I'd like to continue this dialogue. I don't want to take up too much time tonight, but
Yep.
it really, you know, I need tangible things I can wrap my arms around. What is it that we can be supportive of?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you need, that this committee needs to get behind, either system-wide, policy changes, financially, whatever the case may be? Because again, we cannot wait any longer. We're
Agreed.
doing a huge disadvantage to those students and those families, and it's almost negligent now that we know the issue is if we don't act. And so, and I tell you, I know my colleagues, the two here, and I know Mr. Corey, who have a keen interest in special ed and alternative ed. That's why Mr. Aguirre calls for the meetings he calls for on a regular basis, because we're going to ask for updates. We're going to ask for tangible information, data that shows that what you told us needs to happen is actually happening,
Yep.
and that someone's monitoring it, and that we're holding people accountable for it. Because, can I just say one thing? It's a small thing. This whole department's having files at the schools. Are we in a place in this time, in this day and age, where we can do things electronically? Like, is there a possibility that someone can get on a laptop and look at someone's IEP where we don't have to have the file
That's
in the
where
school?
we're moving towards.
Well,
Yeah.
what?
That's where we're moving. Should have
Can
been done years
I was
ago.
gonna say, can we move that fast?
We
Because
have-
I go to my doctor now, and my doctor tells me,
Right, they do my prescriptions.
there's stuff in my
straight
file
from the-
that I don't even know.
right, from the
I even-
iPad.
Like, right, and they're all
Right.
right there telling me
We
what's
could be
going on.
doing the same thing.
I just don't understand in this day and age why
We're
we have to
looking-
rely on a folder with a plan in it when the teacher at their desk or in the classroom can't look on an iPad or a laptop and say, okay, I can read the psychological profile, I understand it, or I can refresh myself with it.
I'll say right now, I was lucky enough from leaving Boston to implement a new IEP system, which actually kept an online storage piece. So they could have the students' plans, they could have all their evaluations right at their
So it should be a
fingertips.
separate portal where people have access through security purposes and can get their caseloads, or, I mean, we have some pretty bright IT people in our district. I would go on beyond and say more than pretty bright. We have some really
There is
bright.
gonna be a
Yep.
cost to this, but we're gonna figure this out.
But there's a cost for not
Nah.
doing it. Because now we got a file in the central office,
They've
and we
been
got
sitting-
teachers
yeah.
who can't deliver
does-
a plan because they don't know what it says, because that's the cost. It's not financial, but it's a cost
I get
in
it.
terms of the quality of education we can provide.
The good news is that we've now called this out. And this is about progress.
Correct.
And what he's gonna be doing is now taking this and operationalizing this into small chunks so that you, at our next meeting, can be clearly understanding what have we done, what's the next step, what's the ask.
And my excitability comes from sitting on this committee for 14 years and hearing each director talk about how they got this, that they got a handle on it, they're gonna put these in place.
Right.
And us pushing back on superintendents of the past and saying, why isn't this happening? We're being told it's happening, we're doing this differently, we're doing that differently. That's where my excitability comes from, because over those years, we've had students go through our schools who have not received what they need.
Right.
And it's a bigger task than I think, Mr. Loesch, but it's high time.
Yep.
I can't hear anymore, we're moving towards that, or we gotta get there.
Well, and what you're gonna see.
It's a sense of urgency, we need to move.
What you're going to see all throughout the report, right, is that it's in collaboration with other departments, because we have to stop doing things in a silo, and that's the way it has been traditionally. When I first went to the IT department this past summer about implementing some things to really move our technology piece, I said, this is the first time anybody asked me in order to do this. So, I mean, that's been a major shortcoming, and that we can't do this alone. I can't do it alone.
No.
We have to collaborate with each and every department to leverage all of our talent in order to make sure these things come into play.
And I'm glad you acknowledge you can't do it alone, because
Yeah.
we know that.
Yep,
We
and
know
like I
that.
said, and what I've told and what I told Dr. Malone is that this document is an evolving document. It's not gonna be set in stone, and we're gonna get feedback from other folks too, because it is gonna need to move over
This is the
time.
first time we've shared it.
But I'll say, if you look at fall of 19, we have already accomplished the majority of it. And in my time here already, I'll say I've encountered some barriers, but nothing I haven't gotten around or solved in order to move the department forward.
When is the spring start and the fall end in your report? Like what month?
We're looking at, I'm looking at more of September through January, and then a February through the end of the year.
Right, so to Mr. Costa's point, you can expect that we'll be having the first week in February, we'll work out the dates, another meeting specifically for this, not with 6 things on the agenda, where we're gonna hold you accountable to each of these things, where you'll report out, and some things aren't gonna work, but you just, okay, here's where we're at.
Yep.
Or we added that one, or we did this.
This is what we
So we'll
tried.
have it in February. Then when the spring's over of 2020, in May or June, whenever that period ends, we're gonna have the same thing, so we'll
Right.
be holding you accountable to making sure you're doing these things.
What I would ask is that the committee does an alt-ed before Christmas and then have sped in February, as you just said. We do have a request tonight, and that is part of his ask, bringing forward 2 position job descriptions, not to hire now, but to get initial read on a job description for positions that were lacking, that we would then go back and bargain because they don't exist. These positions don't
Motion
exist.
to refer to full committee. Bring it next meeting.
Motion made. The other talking about?
Yeah, I
It's
know
the
what you're talking
cluster,
about, the
the things
cluster
you're
coordinator,
talking
but I didn't get a chance to talk or anything.
The other-
This guy started on the next guy.
All right, we'll hold that for a second. No, he was, Mr. Coogan might have a few things to ask first.
Certainly.
Sure.
Go ahead, Mr. Coogan.
My concern with this, and it's kind of basically what we're saying about everything else, who helps you now? Tomorrow you go to work, who's helping you do this now? Because like, I'm with them, this is about 30 items. I mean, you're gonna go down your checklist and bang away at them, but who's doing this with you?
Supervisors, the team chairs, the department as a whole, we're bringing the department together for the first time to get these people to actually work as a team, because this hasn't happened previously. When I came in here, people couldn't tell me who worked in certain positions, who are a part of our own department, which I thought was, it was alarming, but we've
Ask
already
Liz from the
remediated
field.
it. Right?
Liz is a special ed teacher from the field. She told me this 3 years ago. But this is the stuff that we're still dealing with. When I got to the district, so that's 4 years ago, those classrooms are district classrooms. That mentality is what we've changed, and the parents can argue and understand that fully well. So it's a mind shift change that we've been making, and there's progress being made. But when you ask who's his team, right now his team is all of the SPED educators, plus all of us in central office now understanding that I've forced a collaboration, that he has to sit with the learning teaching people, that the SEL people have to be at the same table. So when we're making decisions, if you're not, what's that theory? If you're not at the table, you're next on the dinner list or whatever it is. We're all making those big tent decisions collaboratively. It's a challenge of leadership, but so far it's working.
Mr. Coogan.
Yeah, I mean, it's just heartbreaking what's going on in some of these programs. I mean, when you work in a school, and I think hey, I got a new job, you got a new job, you got to do what I got to do it. So we're going to get things done, and I definitely am going to talk to you about the things you proposed. I'm very much a checklist type person, and you put about 15 items there that you can target and work away at, and I think that if they all come to fruition, you're going to make progress. And I think, I think we can flip this program around. I think we do have things in place, like the stone, like RPA, like some of these things that are building blocks, but you got to put it all together. Good luck, Michael.
Yeah,
That's all, I'm done.
I like solving problems.
So the motion I put on the table was for those 2 positions. Do you have a funding source for that?
We're not,
'Cause if
it's
not,
not
I
this year's
got-
budget.
Oh, it's not in this year's.
It's next year's budget. Because we have to go back and negotiate. I believe they'll fall under the FRAA.
Why do we have to wait till next year to do that?
I don't, but I
Right.
got to go to that next step. I'm not asking to
that's
fund
okay.
them right now.
It's okay.
I could come back
So
later.
I
in
think
January,
if we
half
could
year.
just take them separately, because there's 2, you guys got this?
Yeah.
So there's 2, so you have cluster coordinator on the front side,
Yep.
and that is the sort of the,
It's a support position for our
but
substantial.
they'd be in charge of
Like a
the
program.
program
Yep.
director type, so call it cluster coordinator, program director.
Yep.
But the other side is just a BCBA.
So
So
here's our challenge with the current position. Right now, it's in the teachers' union.
There's 4.
There's 4. We have capacity of 5. We haven't been able to bring the other person on. One of the things we've gotten some of the feedback, one is that our pay for this position compared to BCBA's out in the field is very low. The other piece is too, the current position is called Autism Specialist, which we've gotten feedback from BCBA's out in the community that has actually deterred them from applying for the position because they think it requires them to be an expert in autism, which really we're looking for the BCBA skill set and really their knowledge in order to move behavior and instruction forward in our classrooms. And the other piece is too, is that right now being on a teacher's contract, we don't get to really leverage them to provide the professional development to our teachers, and these are huge assets.
They
So
need
yet-
about
so yet
195
not-
days.
When we say you have a BCBA now, you don't. You have a autism specialist is what you're saying.
That's what it's called.
So let's
They
keep
are-
it clean, that's what that's called.
No,
So-
the current position is called Autism Specialist. The people who are in the role are BCBA's.
Right, but I'm not worried about
Yep.
that. I'm worried about what do we have as a structure right now for
New
positions?
jobs.
Yep.
So you're not asking us to add more, we don't have any BCBA job description. You need this for that.
Correct.
And then you process through whatever you've got to do with that.
Yep.
So I would think that both of these need to be sent to the full committee, which is I think what Mr. Costa's motion was. What I would agree with him that, why are we waiting? We have resources, when
I
you're
get it
ready,
back.
but when you're ready.
Yeah.
So our thing is, let's just, if this is needed, then as soon as you can get it done, get it done. Don't think,
Right.
okay, we got to approve it, so then we'll be talking in June.
Yeah.
No, I'll
So,
rush. I mean,
Agreed.
So motion's made and seconded to approve these, send them to the full committee for the next meeting, and start to work on it as soon as possible.
I think one of the other things to look at is also the joining of SMEC. That is,
I have items under business that could not be predicted within 24 hours that came to fruition today on this topic.
you're right.
I don't know if you want to save that till,
Save it,
Okay.
save it if we can. Let's just get through this, I think we're on
Yep.
the right page. We approve this, so motion's made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. So these two are gonna go to the full committee. I would recommend, based on the vote that we took, that you start the process, even though we gotta go to the full committee, do your background work, whatever you gotta do, so that we can hit the ground running
Yep.
with that. Anything else on this before, Mr. Costa?
Again, I mean, there's a lot of material here. You know, maybe it's best saved for conversation offline, but, you know, so we do have funding coming from other districts for Stone School students.
yep.
6 right now,
Right.
6 to 8.
Where is that tuition money going?
It's going right back into the program.
Okay. Don't spend it just yet,
Yeah.
because I hear a lot of needs, and that was, years ago, when we had the ARA money, the concept of the Stone School was exactly what you just said. I was sitting here saying, yep, there are students. They deserve to be educated here in our district, and this committee took a big step towards that with that money, created the Stone program with the hope that we could market it to other districts, save them the transportation costs, we could collect the tuition. We're at that point now. So
Yeah.
now it's time to reinvest that money back into either that program or
Building more.
building more capacity, whatever the case may be. So I, for one, would say that tuition money, I'd hold on to it, bring back some recommendations where that tuition money can be used to go right back into the special ed services that we're providing in district, whether it's to change something at Stone or whether it's another program or to provide professional development, whatever the case may be. That money should be reinvested right back into these programs. So
Agreed.
I'll leave it at that. I mean, yeah. I mean,
Well said. I know we have on the agenda, we're trying to just move it along, we've been here a little bit.
We covered everything.
SPED progress update.
We covered everything?
What I wanted to talk about today was the ASD program at the high school. I had gotten some complaints about at the beginning of the year. If you could give us just a brief where we're at with that?
Yep, so we definitely struggle with hiring at the beginning of the year. The program now is fully staffed. We've got teachers in all the core contents, as well as all the rooms are fully staffed in terms of paraprofessionals.
That's making a difference.
Certainly is, yep. Kids are getting consistent instruction on a daily basis. Teachers are collaborating. We've also moved it so that the BCBA that was supporting the program is now solely going to be supporting just the high school. They were split before, and they're going to have their main priority just be Durfee.
Okay. Any questions on that particular piece? The early childhood programming, SPED and typical.
You
want
have-
to move that to November, till the meeting with RPA
Yeah.
in December?
Sure.
So-
You have the information.
Yeah.
We can definitely do that.
We
And
all-
just to put a plug in for tomorrow evening,
Oh.
with No Small Matters is being shown at 5 o'clock at the Narrows. Everybody's welcome to attend. It's a joint effort between the Fall River Chamber of Commerce for Education as well as New Bedford's Chamber, and it really is to put the focus on early childhood education.
Can I just-
5 o'clock at
Yes,
the
at the
Narrows.
Narrows
Narrows.
tomorrow evening. 45 minutes showing of the video, and then after dark conversation.
Okay, sounds good. Mr. Costa?
When did we know about that? The district? When did the district know that they were doing this showing? Because I just got the email on
We
that, I
sent it
think,
out 3
today.
weeks- We sent it out 3 weeks ago.
I just got the email on it.
Yeah, we,
So
It's
if the
been out.
district knew, you want participation, you want attendance, then you gotta give us notice. I can't get an email the night before or 2 nights before saying, oh, by the way, at Wednesday at 5 o'clock, we're doing this showing, we'd like you to be there, because I'm not sure, but I'm gonna go on a limb and say most of your schedules are pretty booked up as well. So if you know about those things, try to push them out.
I'm pretty
I just-
positive we informed the committee in a Friday email that this was going on.
I just got the email.
I'm pretty
Alright, maybe
positive
you
about
just-
that.
Yeah.
Check it out, we can get back, but points all taken, I think. We want to support you, but it is
We've
difficult.
informed every district member.
Today at
least
11
twice.
o'clock.
No, we sent another one out today as a reminder, but we sent that out twice to all district members, and then we sent it in a Friday email.
I'll be willing to stand corrected. No doubt.
Yeah.
This isn't meant to
No, I get it.
pick a fight.
Yeah,
I'm just
I get it.
saying that these types of things are important to the district, they're important to us. And so if you want participation, we need to have the ability to know in advance. And like I said, I got this at 11:07 today, and I've read the weekly emails, and if I missed it in that, I stand corrected. I'm just saying that these are important things. The sooner we know, the more likely we can be
The-
available.
Along with that, what I would suggest, and I know we like to get the Friday updates, but what would be helpful are things like this, if it's a separate email that said no small matters, like whatever the topic is, because sometimes we get a lot of info and then it goes all the way across the bottom and you never see it. So just as if you really want to accentuate and stress a thing to get somebody, have somebody else send it out, or maybe you send it out to just as a topic. That would be my only suggestion. But you had 2 topics for?
Yes. As you know, you approved last year us to apply to be members of the South Coast Board. It was a discussion and negotiation involving school committee member Corey and their executive director, myself, and at the time, Assistant Superintendent Ann Dargan. The agreement that we had was that the Assistant Superintendent would serve on their board. That would then be Mike Loesch. They're approving our request. The issue is the State Department of Education has informed us today that the law prohibits an assistant superintendent from sitting on their board. There's 2 options. It has to be the superintendent or a member of the school committee elected by the committee or appointed by the committee to serve on their board. And if that's something that Mr. Corey wants to do, I'd bring him forward at the
Yeah, if he
next
wants to do it, let him do it.
committee and put him on.
Motion to refer
You need
to
it
full
by tomorrow?
committee.
I don't need it by tomorrow.
Oh.
They just let us know today. The reason why I'm letting, I found this out today.
Motion to
He
refer
wants
to
to
full
do it,
committee.
yeah.
Motion made,
Second.
seconded, all in
I'll
favor?
second.
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
Right. The second item on the same topic, also from discussion today with the department, was that we're also looking at the possibility of joining the SMEC collaborative, which is
Southern Massachusetts Educational Collaborative.
which is a different membership because we don't have as many kids serving it, but it does come with training. And if that's also accepted, that committee itself is solely school committee. It's not a superintendent at all. It's different models,
So I would say bring,
both.
we already brought it, but bring it to the committee with some more info, like to
Yeah.
make sure we're not violating
Yeah.
any kind of like, school committee members doing the role of school committee versus, nothing against Mr. Corey or anybody, but we don't want to set him up either
Right.
to be doing stuff that's not school committee related, so.
Right, but I will let the executive director at South Coast Collaborative know that the subcommittee is moving forward with a recommendation to appoint the committee.
Absolutely.
Sounds good. Anything else? You look like you want to say something.
Item just SMEC's board is actually all school committee members from
Yep.
parts of the residential districts.
Anybody else have anything?
Can I just say that?
Anybody in the audience want
That was just
to weigh in on
Southwest
anything?
Superintendents.
At the beginning, we didn't have, it's up to you. If you're here, you want to. So we will be having we will have another meeting in December with as you saw, and then February, the first week in February or so, will be the next special ed one. We'll make sure we get you notice, and they'll get you notice.
Alt ed, early childhood in
Yep.
December.
Motion to adjourn by Mr. Coogan, seconded. All in favor? Aye. Thank you all very much. Have a great night.